Hi, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in the last tutorial I showed you how to create this little application here, and at the moment this button adds stuff to this text area, and these buttons in this little toolbar don't do anything, but I want them to add text to the text area instead of this button. Now the challenge here is if I look at the code and I go to the main frame, so mainframe's adding a toolbar that I created. It's a custom component that I showed you how to create earlier, and it's adding this custom text panel component. But how do you get communication going between the two? And I'll show you what you could do, and then we'll look at the problems with that, and we'll look at how to improve it. So what you really want, ideally, is something like this, where you've got a listener kind of model, where you're listening to one component, and when something happens in that component, it invokes a method, and then you tell another component what to do directly. So the main frame class here it's acting as what we call a controller. If you are at all familiar with model view controller architecture, then you'll recognize that the main frame is the controller here. It's hooking together the components and telling them what to do. And if you're not familiar with it, don't worry, because you will be by the end of this course. So now what I want to do is the simplest thing to do, and this is not the best thing, would be to pass a reference to the text panel to the toolbar, and then get the toolbar to call some method in the text panel. So let's look at how that would work. What I want to do really is, firstly I've got to pass the text panel to the toolbar somehow. So I'd have to give the toolbar a method called, let's say, set text panel, and then I'd pass in a reference to the text panel. So the text panel's of course created here, and here I'm just passing that reference to it so that the toolbar can get at it. And I've got to implement this method, set text panel. So let's do that. I'll go into the toolbar and I'll give it a public void set text panel, and text panel accepts a text panel like this. And now when these buttons are clicked, I want them to do something with this text panel. So I can add listeners to these buttons, and because I've got two very similar buttons here, what I'll do is I need to add action listeners to these buttons so that basically the toolbar is listening to the buttons on it, and it can respond when they are clicked. So I'm going to make this toolbar implement action listener like this. Implement action listener. I'll add the import there, and implements action listener. There we go. And then if I click this error, I can add unimplemented methods, and I've added the action perform method to the toolbar itself, and that means I can then do hello button dot add action listener this, and goodbye button dot add action listener this. And just to see if this works, here in the action perform method I could just do a sysout, and I'll put some text in here. A button has been clicked, and if I run this application now, and it's always a good idea to run your application frequently and to put debugging messages in here to check that it's working as you expect at every stage. And if I just save that and then run it, if I click these buttons, you can see that down here in the console I'm getting some text output. Now the first kind of defect here, before I mess about with this text panel any further, is that I want to know which button has been clicked, and I can do that. Let's rename this arg0. So the action perform method receives an action event, and let's call that E for event. And let's say I can say J button clicked equals e.get source. E.get source retrieves the actual source of the event, which in this case will be one of these two buttons, and it returns a object. But because I know that I've only added the action listeners here to buttons, I can just cast this to a J button. So now clicked will be the actual button that was clicked that invoked this action performed event via this action listener thing here. And I can then say if clicked equals hello button. In other words, if the source is just a reference here, if this is just a reference to this button and points to the same place as this. So if clicked is equal to hello button, then sys out hello, else sys out goodbye. And so if I run that, let's check that it works, and I click hello, and it says hello down here, and I click goodbye, and it says goodbye, which is perfect. And now I just want to hook this up with the text panel. So I need to get this text panel reference somehow into this method, and to do that, of course, I just use a private instance variable. So private text panel, and then in this set method I can just say this.text panel equals text panel. So the private instance text panel equals the one that's passed in. And now finally in down here I can say text panel dot append text hello \n for a new line, and if the goodbye button's clicked, then in fact I could say goodbye. In fact, maybe it would be a bit clearer here if I would say else if clicked equals goodbye button. There we go. Now if I run this and I click hello, it says hello in the text panel, and goodbye, it says goodbye. And I'm going to get rid of this this button here, the button that I originally added in the first place, because I don't want it anymore. So let's get rid of all this. Now this basically gets your application up and running, and it works, as you can see, but there are some major disadvantages here to doing it like this, because what you really want is you want your Swing application to be made up of separate components that know as little about each other as possible. And the way I've written this at the moment, the toolbar is inextricably linked to the text panel. The toolbar is tightly coupled with the text panel, we say in the lingo. It can call any method of text panel, and you can't have a toolbar here without there being a text panel. It's not terribly reusable. And if you look at your application, and bear in mind that it could soon be much more complex than it is now, if you want to debug the communication here that's going on, that's causing these buttons to result in this happening, it's going to be ultimately a bit of a mystery where to look for it. What you really want is you want to be able to say, okay, there's communication happening between components. That's happening in my controller. My controller is the main frame, and the communication should be hooked up here. But instead, what's happening is there is communication going on basically directly between the text panel, between the toolbar and the text panel. And if you carry on writing a whole application like this, it's going to start resembling a rat's nest. And that's why in the next tutorial we're going to look at a bit of a better way to do this, and we're going to look at how to separate more cleanly your toolbar from your toolbar custom component from your this JText area custom component. And the object is that will provide you with a model for building up really complex Swing applications and keeping them from getting into a rat's nest. Okay, so join me again next time, and until next time, happy coding.